Good morning. It is August 15th, 2023, and we're going to do the New York Times daily newsletter by German Lopez and Ian Prasad Philbrick. We are covering the latest indictment against Trump, a climate case in Montana, and outdated sunscreen. Criminal enterprise. Donald Trump was indicted last night for the fourth time, once again over his attempts to stay in power after he allegedly lost the 2020 election. The indictment contains some of the most sweeping allegations against Trump yet. It accuses him of, and some former top advisors, of organizing a, quote, criminal enterprise to reverse the election results in Georgia, where a grand jury handed up the indictment. The document cites 8 ways in which Trump and 18 other defendants allegedly obstructed the election. Among them, lying to Georgia legislature and state officials, creating a fake pro-Trump slate for the Electoral College, harassing election workers, engaging in a cover-up. The conduct that prosecutors described goes beyond Georgia, incorporating Trump and his allies' attempts to overturn the 2020 election results in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and other states. The top charge was brought under a type of law originally created to prosecute the mafia, meaning this is entirely novel, hasn't ever been done before, and we're just going to throw everything at the wall to try and get Trump. The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election results. Fannie Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County who led the investigation, said at a news conference last night. So they admit there's a legal process to challenge it. Trump actually did follow that, and they're just prosecuting him because they don't like him. This is absurd. Harassing election workers. That's going to be fun to prove that one. The indictment. The Georgia indictment is built around the state's RICO law, short for Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations. This type of law primarily targets organized crime. In Trump's case, this law only targets organized crime. Hasn't ever been done with this before. The Times is being disingenuous. In Trump's case, prosecutors argue that he and his supporters engaged in a wide-ranging conspiracy with more than 160 acts aimed at keeping him in power. Well, yeah, he thought he won. He still thinks that he won. So none of what he did was fraudulent because he believed that he won. Whether or not he did is irrelevant here. He has the right to challenge it. They're trying to say you can't even challenge it. And remember, Hillary Clinton challenged her 2016 election loss and tried to do exactly what Trump did. They encouraged the electors to go vote their conscience, and you can vote whatever you want. They tried to get their own electors in too. They objected to Trump's certification. This is absurd. Trump faces 13 charges, including violating the RICO law, soliciting a public official to violate an oath, which he did not do. He specifically said to look for dishonesty. The New York Times lied, so did Washington Post, and they were forced to admit that they lied, and they did retractions. Prosecutors pointed to a phone call in which Trump asked Georgia Secretary of State to, quote, find nearly 12,000 votes. Now, see, they're not using the entire verbiage of the call. And again, that's not illegal. He wants you to find fraud. If there's fraudulent votes, there's nothing wrong with that. Seemingly to change the state's election results. He also falsely claimed that Ruby Freeman, an election worker in Georgia, was a vote scammer and political operative promoting harassment against her and her daughter. You can't say he falsely claimed that. He made an accusation. He's allowed to do that. You falsely claim that Trump called Nazis fine people. RICO, quote, allows a prosecutor to go after the head of an organization loosely defined without having to prove that the head directly engaged in a conspiracy or any acts that violated state law, end quote. Michael Mears, a law professor at John Marshall Law School in Atlanta, told the Times, quote, if you are a prosecutor, it's a gold mine. If you're a defense attorney, it's a nightmare. End quote. In other words, we're making things up here, and they're not even trying to hide it. The 18 others indicted include Trump's former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and some of his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and John Eastman. So now we're charging lawyers. This is not a chilling thing to people. How can you sit there and say, yeah, we're going to charge lawyers, we're going to charge other people. They're going to start charging individuals who said this. If they manage to do this with Trump, they're going to go after people and say, you promoted an election conspiracy, and then you go to jail. Altogether, the group faces 41 total counts. Here's a breakdown of those charges by type. 22 counts related to forgery or false documents and statements. So process crimes that aren't actual crimes because you're allowed to challenge election results. 8 counts related to soliciting or impersonating public officials, officers. That's absurd. 3 counts relating to influencing witnesses, like when Hillary tried to get all of the... It's just so insane. 3 counts related to election fraud or defrauding the state. 3 counts related to computer tampering. One count related to racketeering, one count related to perjury. This is good. Uniquely important. Many of the Georgia case's details overlap with the third indictment against Trump, which also accused him of trying to subvert the 2020 election and was secured by the Justice Department special counsel. But experts say that the Georgia indictment matters potentially even more than the federal case does for two big reasons. First, because the case is at the state level, Trump would have a much more difficult time doing away with the new indictment should he become president again. Trump could get the Justice Department to drop two sets of federal charges against him, and he could try to pardon himself of federal crimes, although experts are divided on whether a president has the authority to pardon himself. But he would have no such power over state charges. In other words, the Georgia case could hold Trump accountable for election interference, even if he were to win the 2024 presidential race. What's funny is the irony of that is these indictments are election interference on Joe Biden's part, but that's okay. Second, the Georgia case could reinforce we don't have a democracy, we live in a republic. Local and state governments largely run elections, including federal races, setting the rules, times, and mechanisms for collecting and counting votes. Yes, and like in Pennsylvania, they illegally changed them to allow Democrats to cheat. The decentralized nature of voting in the U.S. helps keep power out over the process from concentrating in a few hands, but the Democrats would like to federalize that. Funny how they don't mention that. But if counties and states want people to follow the rules, experts say they have to hold lawbreakers accountable. Like Hillary Clinton, when she violated multiple federal laws and had an illegal server and stored classified documents that our enemies maintain, that she transmitted illegally over the server and admitted to it multiple times. Yeah, we need to hold lawbreakers accountable. Like when Hunter Biden illegally disposed of a firearm in a dumpster next to a grade school, like when he lied on federal forms, like when he didn't pay taxes, like when his father's implicated in bribery schemes. Yeah, we need to hold lawbreakers accountable for sure. If we're going to have law enforcement used against attempts to steal presidential elections like Biden stole, state and sub-state governments have a really important role to play, said Richard Hansen, an election law expert at the University of California, Los Angeles. Yeah, he's unbiased. What's next? Trump and other defendants have until noon on August 25th to voluntarily surrender in Fulton County. We look forward to a detailed review of this indictment, which is undoubtedly just as flawed and unconstitutional as this entire process has been, Trump's lawyers for the Georgia case said in a statement. After Trump is arraigned, a judge will schedule the trial. A conviction is not guaranteed. For one, a jury could be put off by the prosecution's novel approach because it's entirely made up, and there's no legitimate reason to do this. The indictment's uses of the phrase cover-up carries echoes of the Watergate scandal. Our colleague Richard Fawcett, who is covering the case, wrote, "It is difficult to imagine that its deep resonance in American political history was lost on the authors of the indictment." Of course it is, because what was the cover-up? Trump did everything out in the open. He didn't attempt to cover anything up. The cover-up would be like when Pelosi erased all the January 6th footage that, challenges her narrative. That's a cover-up. Another cover-up would be when the district attorneys posted the charges before the grand jury was finished, and then they claimed it was a fictitious document. Now, let's see. If the document that was posted was fictitious, that would mean a crime took place, wouldn't it? Because it was posted on a government server. So if someone posted a fake document on a government server, that's a crime. And if someone hacked the government server and posted that document, which was fictitious, according to the prosecutor, it's a crime. But they don't mention anywhere that they're going to go after this crime because it wasn't. They posted the document erroneously beforehand. And what's interesting is it has a case number, it has a filing date, which their statement said it didn't. And it's the exact charges that Trump faces. So, yeah, clear corruption here. For more, the indictment alleges a vast conspiracy reaching from the Oval Office to an election official in a rural county. Trump's arraignment is likely to mirror previous indictments. Rudy Giuliani led the legal effort in several states to keep him in power, which was perfectly fine. And he didn't lose 60 court challenges. He actually won 2 of them, lost 1. The rest of them were dismissed, not on merits, but on standing only. So the left loves to lie about that. Another disastrous Trump indictment. The biased Politico explains how Trump's 2024 opponents responded to the news. What was once unprecedented has now become surreally routine, the Times' Peter Baker writes, referencing Trump's 4 indictments in 4 months. Yeah, it is. It's become routine because the Democrats are throwing away all standards of normalcy just to get the big bad orange man. It shows how desperate they are. It's pathetic, really. Willis's case may well be more straightforward, less legally problematic. No, it's actually even more. She's using RICO charges and even, I mean, the cover-up that there is no cover-up, that's absurd. That's almost as bad. Well, no, I take it back because conspiracy against rights is probably the most absurd thing. So, yeah. Georgia allows court proceedings to be televised. Quote, we know from the January 6 hearings, as well as an early area, the Watergate hearings, the power of seeing and hearing these events firsthand, end quote, Norma Eisen and Amy Lee Copeland write in the Times opinion. In other words, it's just about making Trump look bad. That's it. Hawaii wildfires. The fire that devastated Lahaina ignited 9 hours before it roared through town, yet residents say they received no warnings. Here's how the disaster unfolded hour by hour. And yeah, that's a real big concern, that no warnings of any kind. They had alarms. They had fire sirens, but none of them were initiated. And the power company didn't turn off the electricity, which probably allowed more to start. So some serious questions need to be asked. And of course, from our dear leader, no comment. At least 99 people died in the fires. The death toll is still expected to rise. It's probably going to be considerably higher than that by the time this is done. This is a huge tragedy. In the search for what caused the fire on Maui, experts are scrutinizing Hawaii's biggest power utility, which did not shut off its lines as high winds reached the island. A Montana judge ruled in favor of young residents who sued the state, saying its disregard for climate change infringed on their rights to a healthy environment. You have no right to a healthy environment. That's just... wow. Temperatures have topped 100 degrees in the Pacific Northwest, scorching areas where air conditioning is not as common. That happens every summer. It's not hotter than it was in the 1930s. We started keeping track of temperature at the end of what is called a mini ice age. Yeah, it's going to get warmer. War in Ukraine. At an emergency meeting, Russia's central bank raised interest rates by 3.5 percentage points to try and stem the decline of the ruble. Russia attacked western Ukraine with missiles, killing at least 3 people. The attack shattered the sense of relative security in the west, which is far from the front lines. Recent fighting has been focused on the Black Sea in the south. International. The Chinese government suspended its youth unemployment report, which was expected to show a 7th consecutive increase. So they're doing kind of what we're doing. They're just manipulating the numbers, how we lie. A far-right libertarian candidate won Argentina's presidential primary. He wants to adopt the dollar as the country's currency and embraces comparisons to Trump. So far-right is just a slur now. It probably just means that he's a normal person. Other big stories, Arkansas officials told school districts not to offer AP African-American studies, probably because it has 1619 lies in it. In a court filing, prosecutors provided evidence they plan to use convict Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of the failed crypto exchange FTX. He faces trial in October. And remember, he helped the Democrats in 2020 funnel all kinds of stolen money to Biden's campaign. And then he was let out on bail because the Democrats are corrupt. And as long as you play the right cards and buy the right people off, you can do whatever you want. Opinions. Autocrats like Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin rarely ease into retirement. They tend to become more aggressive and overconfident. '90s sunscreen, America sunblock is worse than foreign formulas. Can Congress fix that? Oh, more government power, of course, for sunscreen. Puppets and protests. Each summer, the Bread and Puppet Theater attracts crowds to rural Vermont for an avant-garde performance with towering papier-mâché figures, political effigies, a rowdy band, and homemade sourdough bread. The driving force behind the shows, Peter Schumann, got his start making puppets for the Vietnam War protest at 89. He's still at the center of a company, the puppetry, the art, and even the baking. Quote, everyone's busy planning my funeral, end quote, Schumann told the Times. Quote, but I work and smoke cigars and drink beer anyway because I have no inclination to be healthy, only to enjoy what I do. Interesting. The Jewish Museum in New York announced its next director, James S. Schneider, who has spent a decade at the Israeli Museum in Jerusalem and the Museum of Modern Art. Another pile of filth. Use a portable dishwasher in your rental. Keep a trash can in your car. Nice. Heidi? Weighty? weighty. I don't know if weighty is a word. Whatever. Have a good one.